without question, Jimmy Carr is one of my favourite stand-ups. When I saw his Dark Material pop up on Netflix, absolutely had to watch this, and I have to say it's fantastic. My only criticism is that the coronavirus references stop far too quickly. I'm not going to give away any of the jokes, of course I won't, but I will say that if you are easily offended, you're not going to like this. Is it darker than his usual kind of comedy? To be honest, I don't think it is. This is hailed as his Dark Material and quote unquote career enders, but honestly, apart from a few small things, I don't think it's much darker than what you usually get with Jimmy Carr. So if you enjoy Jimmy Carr's stand-up ordinarily, you are going to love this. So this is of course set in a theatre. It's an hour in length, obviously truncated from the live performance. If you were there in the audience, I'd love to know what didn't make the final cut. Is the stuff that didn't make the final cut too boring, or is it a step too far even for Jimmy Carr? I highly doubt there is a step too far for Carr, and personally, I don't get offended by any kind of comedy because it's a joke. It's not the thing itself, and this is something that Jimmy Carr highlights several times. Yes, the things he's saying are pretty outrageous, but it's just a joke about the thing, it's not the act. And he starts off with something that is going to eliminate more people than I would like. He starts off with some jokes against anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers and people who think that COVID is not real. And the reaction from the audience is beautiful. The positive response to him making fun of these people is fantastic, because it means that auditorium is full of good people who care about other people. And the fact that he starts like this is really important to me for two reasons. One, it makes it topical. Two, it shows that even though he's making jokes about dark topics, he's on the side of those who suffer. By which I mean, he doesn't think people should be not vaccinated because it affects everybody, not just those who make those decisions. And that's something that's very true with Jimmy Carr. Yes, the jokes he makes are about really dark things and taboo topics, but usually the jokes are against those who are the bad guys in those situations. It's rare that he would make fun of somebody for being the minority, unless it's something frivolous like being ginger, which does happen in this episode. I have naturally very auburn hair, which I dye black for the life of me. Not offended. I couldn't care less. But if you are easily offended, avoid at all costs. There are a lot of anecdotes in this, which Jimmy Carr's style. He does take us on a journey. Not as much as some comedians. There are some comedians who will start off talking about something and then it will arc and then it will come full circle. And at the end of the show, the comedian references something from the beginning. Not the case here. It's a lot more segmented, a lot more fragmented. There are even a couple of kind of one-liners in here as well. So it's not quite the same journey as we get with a lot of comedians. I'm trying to think if any of his previous shows have taken us on a story. They might have done. Top of my head, I can't remember, but that's not his style as much as it is some other comedians. The topics he covers are very wide-ranging, from sexual crime to terminal illnesses. And he actually tells us this lovely story about a gig he did in a hospice. And I won't kind of go into the joke of it. Again, how could that be a funny thing? But it's actually a really sweet story about comedy and I guess addressing the elephant in the room and how much of a positive effect that discussing that negative subject can have. Okay, I'll go into a tiny little bit about this to explain, but then I think it's summarizing the entire benefit of doing a show full of dark material. He's doing a charity gig in a hospice for cancer patients. Everybody in that room is obviously dying, and he talks about how once he did a joke about the big C, it's like the weight lifted from everybody's shoulders. There was this unison the auditorium laughed a lot. I say auditorium, it was a room in a hospice, but they laughed a lot because it's this shared understanding, this shared experience, and the joke itself was, although to some in poor taste, actually addressing a serious topic in a light-hearted way and trying almost to make fun of ourselves and just rolling our eyes at the ludicrous situations we find ourselves in. And that's something that really comes across in this. Usually his comedy is very dark, but in this one he's actually addressing it all the way throughout, pointing out that this is a dark joke, but this joke works because of XYZ reason. And I think that that's beautiful, especially with British humour. If you're not British, maybe you won't get this. Maybe you will, I hope you do. But when things are tough in life, we laugh at ourselves. We take these dark subjects, these harrowing situations, and turn them into comedy, because that's how we get through things. And Jimmy Carr is at the top of his game with that. And some snowflakes are easily offended by that. But you have to just remember, as Jimmy Carr points out, it's a joke about the thing, not the thing itself. It doesn't, and I think Jimmy Carr mentioned this, maybe I'm making this bit up. By making jokes about it, it keeps it at the front of our mind. It keeps these serious topics circulating so we can talk about it, so we can start a dialogue about it, so we don't brush them under the rug, which I feel like, as Brits, is something that we would do. Serious topics, we don't like to discuss them, but by broaching them with a joke, or by Jimmy Carr beginning that dialogue with a joke, we can then open up the floor to more conversation about it, and then this conversation can turn a bit more serious. And I just think it's an absolutely beautiful thing to make comedy about really dark conversations. Now, as I said, I don't think this is darker than most of his comedy. There may be a few things that I would say, yeah, that was a bit on the nose, but for the most part, not really. The only thing that I think was a bit darker was his interaction with the audience. He was a lot more bluntly spoken, and quite embarrassingly so if you're in that audience, I think. Oddly, we didn't get to see any close-ups of the audience when he was interacting with them, so it was impossible to see how these individuals reacted. The one that stood out to me was Charlie's mother. I think Charlie was 17. At one point, Jimmy Carr makes a sexual joke about this boy's mother, who was sitting next to him in the audience, and that for me was one of the most shocking things, because it's a joke about something, but it's directed at a specific individual in that audience, and I would have loved to have seen her reaction. But we don't get to see the audience close up at all, which is the only real criticism I have of this. I guess the other criticism is that it's not long enough. I would have loved it to have been longer. I laughed out loud 3 times in the first couple of minutes. He's absolutely at the top of his game. I don't think Jimmy Carr could have a career ender. The only time he could end his career is if snowflakes take things too seriously, or if he targets a specific person, which he doesn't. He doesn't tend to do that. I think he is fantastic. If you like his comedy, you must watch this. It is definitely one of his best. Is it his best? It's hard to say, because it's certainly one of his most topical, and something that's topical and satirical is definitely going to be more powerful than something watched years down the line. Definitely check it out though. It is rated 18. That's kind of needless to say. I wasn't sure what to expect from it. It is dark. It's not impossibly dark, but it has its moments. Jimmy Carr is fantastic. He will never be cancelled. Really cannot be cancelled. He is brilliant. And I think his dark material is unquestionably worth a watch.